I'm Dr. Melanie with Venture Chiropractic, and today we're going to be covering pelvic floor dysfunction, the symptoms that are associated with it, and also we're going to show you a couple tips of how to get back in connection with your breathing. After we have given birth, a lot of the times after about 10 months of carrying your little one, our posture changes. It begins to kind of pull forward in this direction. And this is part of the issue. After we have our babies, we don't always bounce back like everyone thinks that we should in a few short weeks. You have to give yourself time to heal properly, to enter slowly into exercises so you don't injure yourself and you have long-term or chronic issues. So first, covering pelvic floor dysfunction. Some of the symptoms that people may experience are that uncomfortable and embarrassing leaking. When you jump, you sneeze, you exert yourself. You may also have some difficulty or pain in the SI joints in the lower back. It does not mean in this case that it's always a loose or weak pelvic floor. Pelvic floor can be overtight or lacking muscle tone, and it's really important that you seek a specialist who is properly trained in an internal exam. I would love to share some of the resources we have in town and get you connected with those individuals who can properly diagnose whether you have a tight or loose pelvic floor. Just to cover a couple of the symptoms, and you can feel it out if you feel like that connection or that referral is necessary. If you have a hypertonic or tight pelvic floor, it often means that your pelvic floor cannot relax properly. And this can be urinary frequency, where you stop and start urine. You don't have a complete emptying. So you may also be leaking when you sneeze, cough, laugh. That is a sign of a tight pelvic floor in some cases. You may be constipated, you may have pain during intercourse, and of course the lower back pain are some of the symptoms of a tight pelvic floor. Conversely, if you look at a loose or weak pelvic floor, this symptoms also may be urinary and fecal incontinence. You may not feel like you did prior to giving birth. You may have the SI joint pain right in your lower back, and you could in some cases feel a heaviness, and you constantly are being tight because you're scared to let go. And in that case too, it could be a sign of a prolapse, and that also needs some proper guidance, and a referral is definitely needed to get you some help in that category. So dysfunction of the pelvic floor is very common after giving birth, and how quickly you recover from that is all dependent on what process you go through, the exercises, the help that you may need to help you go through this. Do not accept pain and some of the embarrassing and uncomfortable side effects that happen after giving birth. They are not normal, and there are lots of options to get you help. So kind of moving on from pelvic floor, that is what we're working on, and some of the exercises that we'll be showing in some future videos will also address some of that. But first, the breath. Again, with pregnancy, as we have our lovely bumps that start to grow, our body may leave this nice neutral spine and start tipping forward. This anterior pelvic tilt of the lower back is very common because we have our beautiful babies that we're holding on to, and the weight of that leans us forward, and our body does not want to collapse and fall. So we start making adjustments and alter our posture. And when we do that, our respiratory diaphragm that rests right here and our pelvic diaphragm no longer connect. You want to think of your core as a cylinder or a container that should have equal pressure around at all times. And what happens when we change our posture and we have an anterior pelvic tilt, which is very common, our respiratory diaphragm moves forward and our pelvic diaphragm is left behind us. Now when we take our breaths, they no longer meet. And so when we're doing that coordination of the inhale and exhale, we have that off-center appearance, and that good contraction that we should be feeling to engage all the proper muscles cannot happen. And so what we need to do is to pull that back, get and improve our posture, and then also support that with the proper exercises. So what we want to do, always think of to our breath. We should not be breathing at the chest at all. And in some cases, when you may have incontinence or leaking, we want to constantly be tight, so we suck in our belly and we kind of tighten and squeeze our pelvic floor because we're afraid that something may happen. And then that leads to some chest breathing. So one of the things that I like to do is have my hand on my chest, my other hand on my belly, so I know where I'm breathing. And you should have softness up top, and we should be feeling our breath in our stomach. So as we take our first breath on the inhale, you should feel everything push down. Our respiratory diaphragm moves down as our lungs fill with air, and our pelvic diaphragm catches our organs and all of the stuff that we have in the center. And with that, you should feel your pelvic floor widen and relax. On the exhale, as we push our air out, the pelvic diaphragm assists with that and elevating or coming up, and the respiratory diaphragm also pushes the air up and should rise as well. And again, we want both of those diaphragms to be in connection to each other and be flowing up and down in a nice coordinated fashion. And so what we're gonna do, you can first place your hand on your chest, hand on your belly, and we're gonna work on feeling our pelvic floor catch our breath and then everything push back up. So I'll demonstrate. That's one way to do it. Another option is to have your hands around your back, because our core also wraps through here. Our core is not just our abdominal muscles, but it is also some key players in our lower back, our pelvic floor, and our diaphragm. So there's a lot of muscles. Our glutes are involved. There's a lot going on. So as you place your hands, you want to feel here, feel here. As you inhale, you should feel your belly move outward and some pressure push out on that container or that canister if you're kind of a visual person. As you exhale, you should feel all of that come in, and with your fingers, you should feel some tightness happening around those muscles. When you begin, bring your pelvis back so you're in a nice neutral position. I don't want you to over squeeze your glute muscles or your butt muscles, but we should just rock back. So our pelvic triangle right here is nice and vertical, and we're not pointing that lower triangle out or tucking it beneath or in between our legs. So a nice rectangle right here. So we're gonna do our nice setup position, our hands here. We're gonna take our nice inhale and exhale. Feel those muscles engage. We're gonna inhale and exhale. Really focus at various points that relaxation and that tightening of both of those muscles. Standing is one of the most difficult positions to be in because you have nothing to support your back. And so I like two other positions actually to begin in, and that would be laying down first to practice your breath, and then sitting. And then once you feel like, okay, this is very natural, I got this coordinated breath, I'm visualizing what's happening, then you can stand and introduce these activities throughout your day. It's very important that when you are exerting yourself or lifting weight, let's say baby for example, that we're not inhaling on the lift. Instead, take a deep breath, go close to the baby or the object you were lifting, and exhale as you lift the weight up. That will push and engage those muscles, your abs, your back muscles, your pelvic floor, and your diaphragm will be working to really create a nice, strong canister or support so you do not injure yourself. So what I'll show you next is how to breathe on the floor, and then we'll sit and we'll go through that progression. All right, you have now mastered the engagement of those muscles and the breath, the connection of that on the floor. So you can now move to an exercise ball or in a seated position. While you are using the exercise ball, we don't want you rocking forward. So if you imagine that pelvic triangle, that tip should not be tucking between your legs, and it should not be popping forward where you're sitting on your tailbone, but we should be engaged and feeling that exercise ball under those hard bones. On our bottoms, this notch right here, we should slightly elevate or lift towards the ceiling, or if it helps, think of a string from the crown of your head lifting you upwards. So great starting position here. You may have your hand on your chest, hand on your belly if that helps, or the modification, hands around your ribs. And we're gonna hop right into those repetitions. So nice breath in. And out. In. and out. Make sure when you're inhaling, you're taking and filling those lungs completely full of air so that pelvic diaphragm really catches everything in the middle, can widen and relax, and on the exhale, let all that air out. So you get that nice tightness or tension underneath your fingertips. You should feel muscle all throughout that area if your hands are placed here. So the progression, lying down, move to a seated position, and then you can stand and work the breaths in that position as well. Because let's face it, we get very little time to lay on the ground. Throughout your day, you are sitting in a chair, you are standing, you're moving about the house or work, and so you really need to make sure you are breathing properly in all of these positions. The more you work on it in this space, the little bit of time you have to spend consciously thinking about engaging those muscles, it becomes a habit. And that is a great thing. The more your breath is coordinated, the less chance of injury, the less pain you'll have. You'll start really feeling better all around. So remember, we are here for you at Venture to help you move better, feel better, and be a better you.
Everybody's moving, everybody's moving, everybody's moving, 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 moving. Everybody's moving, everybody's moving, everybody's moving.